Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. I am absolutely over the moon, pun intended, to be sitting here with a true titan of history. For those who may somehow not know who you are, who are you?
Hello, Calvin. I'm Neil Armstrong. Most people know me as an astronaut and the commander of the Apollo 11 mission. But at heart, I've always just considered myself a White Sox, pocket protector, nerdy engineer.
A very accomplished engineer. So, let's take it back to the beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on August 5th, 1930, on my grandparents' farm just outside of Wapakoneta, Ohio.
And what was your given name at birth?
My parents named me Neil Alden Armstrong.
Is there a specific story behind your birth name?
Not a grand one, I'm afraid. Neil is of Gaelic origin, meaning champion, though I think my parents just liked the sound of it. My middle name, Alden, was a family name from my mother's side.
Wapakoneta sounds like a classic American setting. What was your hometown like growing up?
It was a wonderful, quiet place. Because my father was an auditor for the state of Ohio, we actually moved around quite a bit, living in about 20 different towns, before finally settling back in Wapakoneta when I was an adolescent. It gave me a great appreciation for the Midwest and a sense of stability despite the moves.
What was your family life like during all those moves?
My family was very close-knit. My father, Stephen, and my mother, Viola, provided a very supportive traditional home. I had a younger sister, June, and a younger brother, Dean. We weren't wealthy, but we had everything we needed, especially a love for learning.
What kind of kid were you? Were you always looking at the stars?
I was a fairly quiet, serious child. I became an Eagle Scout, which taught me a lot about discipline. My fascination wasn't actually with the stars at first, it was with flight. I started building model airplanes when I was very young and was constantly reading aviation magazines.
Did you have any big fears growing up?
Honestly, my biggest fear was probably not being able to fly. I was so determined to get into the air that any obstacle to that felt like a major threat. I actually worked various jobs starting at age 10 just to save up for flying lessons.
That leads perfectly into my next question. What did you dream of becoming as a child?
An aircraft designer or a pilot. I wanted to understand how things stayed in the air, and then I wanted to be the one to keep them there.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
I played the baritone horn in the school band. I also loved science and math, naturally. I was always the kid trying to figure out the mechanics of how things worked.
What was your very first job?
I had several, but my first real one was at a pharmacy in Wapakoneta. I also mowed grass at the local cemetery. I'd do just about anything to earn the $9 an hour it cost for flying lessons back then.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
I don't know if I felt different, but I certainly felt ahead in one area. I earned my pilot's license at 16, before I even had my driver's license. My mother had to drive me to the airport so I could go fly solo.
That is incredible. What's a decision that changed everything for you, but felt small at the time?
Choosing to apply for a Navy scholarship for college. I wanted to study aeronautical engineering at Purdue, and the Holloway plan allowed me to do that in exchange for service. That decision led me to become a naval aviator, which eventually led to the Korean War, and then to becoming a test pilot.
What would you consider your biggest break?
Being selected for the second group of NASA astronauts in 1962, the New Nine. Transitioning from being a civilian test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base to the space program was the turning point of my life.
What were your biggest struggles before that success?
The life of a test pilot is inherently dangerous and full of technical failures. You're constantly pushing machines to their breaking point. There were many times when a flight didn't go as planned, and you had to rely on every bit of your training just to make it back to the ground.
With all that danger, did you ever consider quitting?
No, I viewed the risks as a necessary part of the job. If you want to expand the boundaries of what's possible, you have to accept that things won't always go smoothly.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel were essential to your success?
Preparation. I was a firm believer in knowing every nut and bolt of the craft I was flying. I spent hours in simulators and studying technical manuals. In flight, you don't have time to look things up. It has to be second nature.
What job would you have had if the whole fame thing never happened?
I would have been a professor. In fact, after I left NASA, I became a professor of aerospace engineering at the University of Cincinnati. I loved the quiet life of academia and teaching the next generation of engineers.
What was your life like before the world knew your name?
It was actually quite adventurous, but private. As a test pilot, I was flying the X-15 rocket plane at the edge of space. It was high-stakes work, but I could still go to the grocery store without being recognized.
How did your relationships change after the success of Apollo 11?
It put a lot of pressure on my family. The world suddenly felt like they owned a piece of us. It was difficult to maintain a normal family life when there were cameras and reporters constantly curious about our private moments.
Did that fame bring you happiness?
The mission brought me professional satisfaction and a sense of awe, but the fame itself was something I merely tolerated. Happiness, for me, was found in a well-engineered solution or a quiet afternoon on my farm.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The loss of privacy. I am a private person by nature, and suddenly being a global figure was very uncomfortable. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a pilot doing a job that thousands of people had worked to make possible.
What misconceptions did people have about you?
People often thought I was reclusive or aloof because I didn't do many interviews. In reality, I just didn't think I was that interesting. I felt the credit belonged to the entire NASA team, not just the man who happened to be at the front of the line.
What was your darkest moment?
Losing my 3-year-old daughter Karen to a brain tumor in 1962. It was a devastating personal loss that I carried with me, even during the busy years of the space program. It's the kind of thing that changes your perspective on everything.
What's something people misunderstood about your life?
Many people thought the moon landing was the end, quote unquote, of my story, or the only thing I cared about. For me, it was one mission in a long career of flight research. I was just as proud of my work as a test pilot and a teacher.
Tell me about a time when everything went wrong and how you handled it.
During the Gemini 8 mission, a thruster got stuck and we started spinning uncontrollably. At 1.1 revolution per second, we were close to blacking out. My co-pilot David Scott and I had to stay completely calm, diagnose the problem, and use the re-entry thrusters to stop the tumble. It was a very close call, but we stayed focused on the checklist.
Did fame and fortune change your life?
Fame changed my surroundings, but I don't think it changed me. I still enjoyed the same simple things. As for fortune, I never sought to cash in on my name. I lived a relatively modest life as a teacher and a farmer.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My parents for their work ethic, and certainly the pilots I flew with in Korea and at Edwards. They taught me that excellence is a habit, not an act.
What was life like in your final years?
Very peaceful. I lived on a farm in Ohio, enjoyed my grandchildren, and stayed active in the engineering community. I stayed out of the spotlight as much as possible, focusing on my family and my hobbies.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
Even in quote-unquote retirement, I was very involved in advocating for the future of space exploration. I testified before Congress a few times, expressing my concerns and hopes for where NASA was headed. I never lost my passion for the frontier.
When and where did you pass away?
I passed away on August 25th, 2012, in Cincinnati, Ohio.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I once had to jump out of a lunar landing research vehicle, the Flying Bedstead, just seconds before it crashed and exploded during a training flight. I walked back to my desk and kept working. Some of my colleagues didn't even realize I'd almost died until they heard the explosion.
That is the definition of cool under pressure. What's the craziest rumor ever told about you?
Oh, there's a famous urban legend that I said, "Good luck, Mr. Gorski," before leaving the moon. It's a funny story involving a childhood neighbor, but I can tell you, I never said it.
What was your most unique habit?
I was a bit of a stickler for technical accuracy. If I saw a movie or read a book that got the physics of flight wrong, I'd have a hard time enjoying the rest of it.
What was your favorite food?
I've always been a fan of a good, simple bowl of oatmeal. And you can't beat a good piece of cherry pie.
Did you have a favorite restaurant?
There was a little place in Wapakoneta called the Cupie. They have great hamburgers. Whenever I went back home, that was a must visit.
What was your favorite book?
I enjoyed The Wind in the Willows as a child, but as an adult, I spent most of my time with technical journals and biographies of other explorers.
Did you have any known rivalries?
People like to imagine rivalries between the astronauts, but we were a team. There was healthy competition, of course, but we all knew our lives depended on each other's success.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
During the Apollo 11 moonwalk, we were so busy with the science and the checklist that we actually forgot to mention a lot of the visual beauty until we were prompted. We were focused on the rocks and the telemetry. It was only later, when looking at the photos, that I really soaked in how starkly beautiful the lunar landscape was.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
The quarantine after we returned from the moon. We were stuck in a converted Airstream trailer for days because scientists were afraid of moon germs. Here we were, heroes of the world, and we were basically living in a glorified camper playing cards to pass the time.
What was the most outlandish purchase you made?
I'm not much for outlandish, but buying my farm in Ohio was my biggest treat. It wasn't flashy, but it was exactly where I wanted to be.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Focus on the work, not the reward. If you strive to be the best at what you do, and you do it with integrity, the success will take care of itself. And never stop being a student.
Neil, this has been an absolute honor. Do you have any closing remarks or stories you'd like to share with our listeners before we sign off?
Just that the world is a very small, very fragile place when you see it from 250,000 miles away. I hope everyone takes a moment to look up at the moon tonight and remember that anything is possible if you're willing to work for it. Thank you for having me, Calvin. It's been a pleasure to chat again.
Thank you so much for joining us. What a legendary conversation. We covered everything from Ohio farm life to the surface of the moon and the quiet life of an engineer. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.